Waterhole. So I hope you're excited and hopefully the wildlife also shows up. My name is Taylor McCurdy and it's great to have you all joining me today. So if you are watching and you are a regular viewer, welcome. Looking forward to having all of the chats with you. You know how to ask me questions, but if you are new here and you're wondering what on earth this is all about, this is a live and interactive waterhole show where there are cameras splashed across Africa and we have access to them. And right now we're in South Africa in a game reserve called Madikwe, and this waterhole is specifically known as the Jamala waterhole. So if you want to ask me questions, you can either hashtag WildEarth on Twitter or X, whichever one you prefer calling it. I will always be a Twitter girl. And then you can also head over to the YouTube chat for the first little bit of the show. And otherwise, the best way is to head over to the WildEarth website and just use the question box there. But I'm going to give it a minute or so just to see how many of you are on board and that I'm not talking to myself. There's quite a few clouds building in the sky all around the northeastern and western parts of South Africa. But let's go check out what the weather is going to be like at the various locations. There we go. So you can see not freezing cold temperatures, nice and warm. It's definitely humid in the low veld. Uh, I can't wait for the big rain to fall. We've had a couple of drips and drabs here and there, but nothing exceptional. Anyways, right, Catherine, you're here today. Welcome. Hello, hello again. And then Shiv, you've asked if I have any caterpillar updates. For those of you that have no idea what I'm talking about, my life is basically a part of the show because so much chaos erupts while I'm trying to host the waterhole shows us normally in terms of wildlife. Anyways, so sadly, my big caterpillar was eaten by something, and I know this because there was this regurgitated green liquid that is often left on the plants, either when a caterpillar is ripped apart or if it's trying to sort of get away, they'll often regurgitate this stuff. So there was that on the leaves. So I'm 99% sure it got eaten. And then I had another caterpillar that was not, I hadn't got to the green stage just yet. These are the larval stages of a citrus swallowtail butterfly, and it's disappeared now too. But some of the eggs have hatched. So this morning I counted 5 little teeny tiny caterpillars, and yeah, so we'll see. I'm sure there's more on there. Anyways, there have been a flock of white-crested helmet shrikes, which is a bird species that we can see at any of these locations, especially if we head down to Timbavati or even to Olifants Waste Game Reserve or to Juma. We could potentially see them, but they love to eat caterpillars and they've been hanging around. So I need to keep them away from my little lemon tree. Then we've got Caitlin Boss. You joined us all the way from Australia. Hello, hello. And Patty B, you're very excited. It does look like a gorgeous day at Jamala. You're 100% right. And Larry, you've also jumped and you said hello. It's good to have you, Larry. And then Konakli, I think I'm saying that correctly, or Konakli Alanya from Turkey. Hello, hello. This is great. We've got a group of wonderful people, literally all over the world, joining us, which is great. It's a bit quiet at the moment at Jamala, and I'm really hoping that this is not going to be the case for the entirety of the show. I know it's a Sunday, it's supposed to be the day of rest or whatever you prefer, but come on, animals, it's not that chilly. So I think what we can do is maybe let's start scanning around this water hole and start looking for something. So I don't control the cameras, just so that you are aware in case you also get frustrated. It's not me, I promise. I just kind of suggest what's done, and then hopefully the cameras listen to me. It's not the cameras that listen, but they're people that are controlling them. So we can clearly see that there's nothing out on the wide, which means we're going to have to zoom in now and start looking for some smaller things to talk about. So while the cameras zoom up and down, hoping to find something, I'm just going to keep my eye out scanning, and then we'll take it from there. So scanning along the water's edge like this could potentially be good. There's quite a few bird species that live around the edge of the water. And in fact, actually, let's go back to the right to where the logs are in the water. There were birds. There were quite a few birds. Okay, there we go. See, they're being used as a perch at the moment. I think it is a Namakwa dove that is moving around on the log. It's got a looks like a dove, and it's got an exceptionally long tail. Sure. Okay. We lost it. It flew away. Anyways, Chris Parsons, you said hello from Arizona. You love it when we talk about birds. Well, hopefully we'll be able to show you some. The Namakwa dove has now flown away while we're trying to settle on it. It's a nice one. Not an uncommon bird. They are around. We typically see them around water holes too. An impala ram just zooting across. You can see its reflection quite nicely. And there is also a little, oh my goodness, what is wrong with my brain now? Bunting. Oh, it looks like a cinnamon breasted bunting because I can't see the bright golden color that the golden breasted buntings typically show. And normally it's quite obvious. It might be because it's standing side on, but both of the species do occur in this area. Very easy to identify with that bright white eye stripe or supercilium, and then it's got a black crown to go with it. And it's likely sort of elongated bird, not like it almost looks like someone has stretched it out a little bit. I think it was a cinnamon breasted bunting. Very cool. Nice to see. Sanjeev, you said 3 days back a mature black rhino got stuck in a small water hole somewhere in South Africa. It was then eaten by 9 lions, and you've asked what are the rangers doing. I have no idea. I didn't see that. I definitely don't work in those areas, so I am unfortunately unable to comment. But maybe the video that you watched, maybe there were people that were commenting on it. Maybe there was an official statement that was released. But unfortunately, that is something that you're going to have to do some investigating about. I have no idea. Also, the other thing you have to be careful of with the internet is that people repost videos from years and years. I'm not saying that this one is, and years ago, and post them as if they've just recently happened. So, but I'm not sure about that. Sorry, Sanjeev. And then Kathleen, hello, you've just joined. And then Saris, you've also joined from the UK. Welcome, welcome. And Alec, you're also jumping on and looking forward to all sorts of wonderful sightings. Well, we're just focusing on birds at the moment because the mammals seem to be hard to come by. We've got Egyptian geese, lots of dove species. Those look like ringneck doves, just from the white edging on the tail that you saw when it sort of just jumped up and flapped its wings. Oh, there we go. Caitlin, you've just jumped on and you've said hello, Taylor. You asked how Tucker, my dog, is doing because your dog is watching WildEarth. Tucker is on the floor sleeping right now. He's been keeping the squirrels at bay today.
Welcome to Eco Training Pridelands Conservancy. Hey, Susan, no. Oh, look at her, she's absolutely gorgeous. Look at these two pushing each other.
My goodness, but that's a tricky bird to identify. It looks black. I can't really see the shape of its beak very well. I want to jump and say that it's a fork-tailed drongo. But then I'm like, is that beak maybe a little bit too heavy set? Can I see a fork in the tail? This is where it's tricky. And for those of you that don't know, my screen is actually very pixelated. I'm going to open up YouTube very quickly. Never mind. That didn't really help much at all. I think it is a fork-tailed drongo. It looks like it does have a fork sitting in a fig tree. Ah, Juliet, you said that you're also looking forward to the water holes and what they might bring, but you should actually be tidying and getting the house ready for visitors. Uh, I don't blame you. I'm very good at procrastinating, and I think watching the Waterhole show is the best way to procrastinate. So thank you for that. I hope you do manage to get some tidying and done. Otherwise, please feel free to blame us, tell your guests, and then hopefully they get hooked on the Waterhole show too. Who knows? So I can't believe it. Really, not much happening at all today. Oh my goodness, right. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to head over to Namibia and check out a different waterhole. You can hear the Egyptian geese. So this is quite a famous waterhole. If you haven't visited this waterhole before, whether it was in person or live at the waterhole show, but it's called Okokuya. It's a word that took me a couple of days to figure out how to pronounce. It doesn't quite roll off of the tongue. And it can be quite an interesting place. I'd like to be here in person, though, to be quite honest. Otherwise, we typically just see lots of springbuck, hemsbok, kudu, and impala come down to have a drink. These are all springbuck that we can see around here. And on the left-hand side, it's the Egyptian geese and what once were goslings. They were very small, but they've grown up quite a bit. Now let's have a closer look at them while they're standing still. I think let's just drop the camera down a little bit more just to change the framing up. There we go. Great minds think alike. And you can see it's almost difficult to tell the difference now between the adults and the youngsters. They're shouting at something in the water. I'm not sure entirely what, because we know there's no crocodiles here. But it's quite insane to see the transformation of birds. And for the most part, birds will take, once they've hatched, about a month and a half, maybe 2 months to fully develop. There might still be some color variances on their feathers, though, on their plumage. And then there are a bunch of other birds that take years and years to reach that adult status. And that's not the case with the Egyptian geese, though. Now they're moving away. Hello, springbuck. What's wrong? Just go in the water. There's no crocodiles. What are you panicking about? I really wonder what's ruffled the feathers of the Egyptian geese. I mean, they're normally quite vocal birds, anyways, and you'll find birds will typically sing all day long just to make other birds aware that this space is occupied. It looks like they're just herding the blacksmith lapwing, which is a change of scenery. Normally, it's the other way around. I would love to know what conversations this Egyptian goose is having that it has to keep chatting all the time. Perhaps it's convinced there's something lurking under the water. Anyways, thank you, Egyptian geese. We're going to head back over to Jamala, where a couple of zebra have come down to have a drink. Well, not quite ready to have a drink just yet, but this is the typical process of zebra. It takes forever. But we are lucky to see a zebra foal just in the middle of them. We can have a closer look at that youngster. The zebra would have been born in the last probably 2 months. Also, lots and lots of yellow flowers that have popped up. What kind of yellow flowers do we have? I think some of them look like they might be hibiscuses, but I'm also not 100% certain. They're quite tall, but it's probably something else. It's very difficult when you haven't been to these areas to identify what plant it specifically is, especially when you can't see, can't see any detail on the leaves, for an example. So they will remain unknown unless somebody else has already identified them, which would be great. Then you can let me know. Hello, little one.
Are you a wildlife fanatic, glued to YouTube for your daily dose of animal antics? Then, welcome to Africam's wildlife community. By joining our YouTube memberships, you get no ads, just wild live streams, chat with other bush fans, get early access to exciting camera spots, and flex your wildlife knowledge with fun quizzes. Visit Africam's YouTube channel and click the join button now.
There's such an interesting hue of colors today at the Jamala Waterhole with the overcast skies, kind of creating almost turquoise coloration, which is pretty. It's actually rather beautiful. These many impala have made their way down to the water's edge too. Maybe this is just the start of all the wildlife. I did hear that the sunrise safari was also very quiet this morning. Oh no! Please let it be better today. This is always quite tricky when this happens, and it's. I don't know if you'll agree with me. I just think it's actually spectacular sitting here and watching this waterhole specifically, right? Because one minute there's absolutely nothing around, and then you blink, and as you open your eyes, animals have just erupted from the tree line. And it just goes to show how well camouflaged impala and zebra are, with not very much vegetation between us seeing them and them hiding behind all the trees. Oh, look at all those impala now joining in the line. Justin Wright, a question's just come through from you, wondering if I can please help with a question and put this kind of whole question to rest. I don't even think that that's ever going to happen, Justin. I think this question will be asked for years and years to come. But you're wondering, are zebras black with white stripes? They are. So for those of you that are uncertain of it, the pigment, the color of the skin of members in the Equidae family, it's dark. So it's, for example, like I had a gray horse. He typically, as they get older, they start to get lighter in color, and as soon as you shave the hair away from his or the hair off and down to the skin, you'd notice how black it was. So the same thing can be seen if you look at zebras and you're able to check towards their nether regions. As soon as they lift their tails up, you'll notice there's no hair underneath the tail. That is like the skin essentially that is being shown, and it is black. So zebras are black with white stripes. I don't know if that helps. It's always tricky to kind of understand because you look at them and you go, no, absolutely not. What's underneath? If only, if only they could lift their hair up just to show everyone. Stephen, you've asked specifically to Madikwe Game Reserve, how many different types of animals are here? Lots. There are so many. I mean, it's I think it's a very difficult thing to count, because you've also got to include all the different types of rodent species, right? All these other things that we maybe wouldn't necessarily categorize as animals, right? Because I reckon if I just told you how many antelope, how many birds, uh, yeah, that would have been sufficient. But I don't actually know how many different types of animals there are entirely on Madikwe Game Reserve. I don't know if they have an extensive list, like how accurate it is. I'm sure they have an ecologist, but whether or not they've gone and studied all the smaller species of animals that could potentially occur in this area, I'm not so certain. It's something that I tend to find on game reserves. You have people who are ecologists and are fantastic at their jobs, and or whatever their role may be. They just manage whatever big game, big animals there are. But then we don't really have an understanding of what the smaller things are because we don't go out to try and look for them. And if you don't go out and consistently look for them, I mean, I know people who were searching for a creature for years and years in a single space and never found it. And then eventually they'd find a mole species or whatever the case may be. So it's quite a tricky thing to have as an accurate number once you start thinking of the endless possibilities. But I mean, just some of the common ones that we will be seeing while you're watching. We can see zebra, which we've seen. We've got impala. There's plenty of elephants. You could see warthogs as well. There's waterbuck and kudu and some smaller antelope species. I mean, then you could see any of the big cats around the waterhole too, giraffe. I mean, you can see we can wildebeest. You can just go on and on and on and on and name a whole bunch. But maybe there is an animal list for Madikwe. I just don't guide on the property, so I don't necessarily have all of that information. I just host some of the waterhole shows. But then again, we're typically talking about what we're seeing rather than going on about a mole, for an example, that for the most part lives underground. So yeah, what else do we have here? There's quite a few questions coming in, which is great. Big Bill, you're wondering about impala and specifically about impala lambs. So you've said that when impala give birth, it typically seems to happen at the same time, and you're wondering why is that? So the gestation, so not the gestation, the menstrual cycle is for the most part is synced with impalas. So you're not going to see all the impalas giving birth at the same time, but there's what we call a rutting season with impalas. So typically the females, the mature females, so the individuals that are older than a year already, because they impala normally start breeding in their second or third year, uh, will come into estrus around the same time, and that's when the males will start mating with females. But you quite often will have female impala that come into estrus a little bit earlier, and then again some that will come into estrus a little bit later. And it's very important when you have animals like something like an impala that's quite a vulnerable species to predation, and they're not a big elephant or a rhinoceros, for an example. They also spend time in groups with one another that can really protect themselves. So having more than one young lamb at the same time has got a better chance of some of the youngsters making it to adulthood. If it was just one impala giving birth every couple of weeks, I highly doubt that very many of the lambs would make it to adulthood. They would just be picked off by leopards, lions, hyenas, jackals, you name it, big birds of prey, like martial eagles, for an example. They take impala lambs all the time. So they kind of sync it up. The same thing goes sort of with zebra. We see around the same time too. They typically go into estrus. And now is the time of the year we start to see babies. But again, they don't all just give birth at once. The zebras is a little bit more staggered. So you might see one herd with one or two foals, and then in a few weeks' time, you might see them drop a couple or more. So it's sort of not as closely spaced out as it is with impalas. And then Cabello, you're wondering if impala and zebras have a symbiotic relationship that benefits one another. So the biggest thing with different animal species associating with one another is safety in numbers. So that's going to be the biggest thing. They're kind of working together. Or, you can see, look how nervous and how cautious the zebra now are coming down to drink. And so that while the impala are around between the two species, they're going to be looking out for predators and can alert one another. But zebra also play an important role with a lot of other animal species that like or prefer to eat shorter cropped grasses. So any members in the equidae family, so that's donkeys, that's zebras, that's horses, they don't mind the length of grass that they eat. They're able to eat really short crop grasses, and then they're able to eat grasses that are like really, really long, really tall. For example, wildebeest don't like to eat tall grasses. They prefer to eat shorter crop grasses. So you'll find that they are too often the two species are associating with one another. So zebras will come through, and this is basically how the Great Migration works for the most part, is that the zebras come in, they actually lead the migration and crop the grasses down nice and short, and the wildebeest follow, and then they all intermingle with one another. Buffalo are also really good at cropping grasses nice and short, and so are hippos, surprisingly. But there are so many different types of symbiotic relationships between various animals, and sometimes they're so basic that we don't even consider how they would be helping one another. But there's lots and lots of bugs about. You can see all the zebras swishing their tails. You can also see all the bugs flying across the screen too. And you'll see the zebra not going to stick around for too long. They're just literally going to have a drink, and then they're going to split off into their little groups and carry on eating for the rest of the day. Same thing as the impala. They didn't really stick around. They've just come in to drink, and off they go. If the elephants haven't really been here this morning, then they'll probably come through for a midday drink, which is to our benefit. But now we just have to play the patience game, which is one of the hardest games for me personally to play. Here's a fantastic question from Ingrid. You've asked, would a waterhole be a possible site of disease spreading, or would it attract more predators in the dry season when all the animals would be congregated there? So yes, I would say yes to both options, or both points that you mentioned here. And the reason why I say this, I'll use this as an example. So during dry season a couple of months ago, just I think it was just before spring, there was a zebra that got trapped in the mud at this waterhole because it had sort of walked in quite deep. And because there's no rain for us during the dry season, well, a little bit, but there's not really supposed to be any rain at all. Uh, and then the waterhole not being able to be topped up as easily without the rain. So there's a pump, as you all know, just below these big rocks with a tree in the middle. And the water then can't obviously keep up with the demands at the rate at which the animals are drinking it. So the zebra died, and I think it died in the mud, but quite close to the water. So they made a decision, the conservation team, to actually drag it out of the water hole. And I think that that was a good move, especially during dry season. So when there isn't a lot of water being added, and rain definitely helps with the, by topping the water up quicker than a pump could, especially when there's a decent amount of rain. That water will become very stagnant during dry season, and then yes, a carcass like that can contaminate the water hole. So in a reserve like this, I think it's important to manage these types of things. Uh, in other reserves, if they're open ecosystems, maybe a different story. I mean, you can obviously argue that zebra died because it was encased in the mud, and this isn't a natural water hole. This is a man-made one over here. So, well, as far as I understand, it's kind of a man-made thing. So yeah. So then it's better that the reserve kind of step in. But for the most part, if it's not because of human interference, then the animal will just kind of stay there. But during the droughts that we did have, I think it was between 2014 and 2018. it was quite severe. And I know of a lot of people, even in big open ecosystems, that were pulling carcasses away from water sources to try and preserve what little water was left. So I think it really just depends on what's going on. I'm not one of those people that makes the rules and the decisions. I just abide by them. The other issue during dry season, Ingrid, sorry, is the blue-green algae. It's not an algae, it's called cyanobacteria, but that causes severe poisonings, and again, typically comes around during dry seasons. So it's a really difficult thing to manage. But then predators, of course, tend to spend more time around water holes during dry season because, like you said, animals have to come and drink every single day. So why would you not just sit there and wait? Andrew, the video guy, I'm going to very quickly answer your question here. You've asked, will leopards attack other leopards whilst in trees for territory? Absolutely. I mean, if leopards don't have to fight, they won't. But because that can be, well, detrimental to the both of them if they're severely injured. So there's normally a lot of growling and snarling and sizing of one another up. It could end in a quick 1-2, ba, 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 with a pause and maybe a bit of a tumble, and then they could go their separate ways. But there's just so many different things that it could depend on to determine on how long a fight will happen, or if they'll even engage physically with one another. So it's quite difficult to say, to give an exact yes or no question. So it just really depends on the circumstance. But yeah, leopards will go up into trees and fight. I mean, I'll just give you a quick example. At Djuma, actually, I was doing the live safaris and we were on Chitwa, and Nsumi, who's the daughter of Kuchava, she was sitting up on a termite mound and her mother was stalking her, and her mom actually chased her right up to the top of the tree, and she went into the tree too. So they're again competing for space, even though they are related. Kuchava doesn't want Nsumi to be right in her core territory. So here we go. I believe that Sarah from the UK, this scene that we have right now is mind-boggling. You said that you've never noticed the bundle of rocks with a clump of grass growing out of the top of it before, and you're wondering if someone built it overnight. You're quite right. You've busted. You've caught us. It was the zebra. They are also crafty individuals, and they were able to put this all together. No, so actually the rocks have always been here, but with the bit of rain, these plants have started growing, and it's not actually grass that's growing out here. It's a young leadwood tree, from what I can see. I'm just looking at how the tree is growing quite scrappy. You can see how there's multi stems, which is very typical of leadwoods. And then I'm just looking at the shape of the leaves, kind of like a crinkle sort of cut to. So I would go with it being a young leadwood, and it looks like there's was a bigger tree at some point. It looks like it's been cut, so I don't know. Maybe there was a big tree here initially, and it was chopped down for some reason. Again, I can't answer, and I'm just speculating, so I have no idea. And then maybe the tree is just kind of propagating from that, and it's like you've taken us down once, but I will show you. And it's my favorite birding spot. There's starlings. There was also looks like another bunting that's down on the holding onto the rock. But with all this vegetation coming through, we've had some spectacular sightings. So I've sat and watched this rock quite a bit. We had beautiful sightings of red-billed queelias a little while ago. So this might be our saving grace today.
Are you a wildlife fanatic, glued to YouTube for your daily dose of animal antics? Then welcome to Africam's wildlife community. By joining our YouTube memberships, you get no ads, just wild live streams, chat with other bush fans, get early access to exciting camera spots, and flex your wildlife knowledge with fun quizzes. Visit Africam's YouTube channel and click the join button now.
Florentina, you've mentioned that Madikwe looks a lot drier than Djuma, and you've asked, is there less rain? There is. So Madikwe on average gets over 400, but I'd say maybe between 400 and 550 mils of rain, somewhere in between there. Of course, it's going to be slightly different every single year. Whereas the Sabi Sand Game Reserve, or the Sabi Sand Wildtuin, where Adjuma is located, it can get anywhere between 650 and I'd say just under 800 mils of rain. Probably closer to about 700 mils of rain. So it doesn't sound like a huge difference, but it really is. Um, and the biomes are also quite different. Madiko is interesting though because it comprises of a bunch of different biomes. It also does sort of come to the edge of the Kalahari Plain, so that's why it's so dry, it's so arid. We've also got the mountains that feature here, and they're not, as far as I understand, I don't think they're Afromontane sort of forested areas at the base of the mountain. I think it's just arid for the most part. And then you look at Juma, and it's very much a savanna, sort of bushveld biome. So two very very different areas. I mean, this is right. Madikwe is not far from Botswana, and that entire area in like sort of the Tuli block, Mashatu, and then you extend even further west. It's all incredibly arid, very rocky, and yeah, a lot of basalt. It's very different from what we see in the Sabi Sand. Although these big mountains, though, and when it gets quite arid, especially during dry season, makes for beautiful scenery. So I actually prefer it. I don't think the Sabi Sand, for an example, is necessarily that pretty. There are elements on certain properties that have got spectacular granite boulders and big river systems, but for the most part, you don't have a lot of elevation like you do in a place like Madikwe. And Jenny, you wanting to know if WildEarth has ever had a otter on camera? That is a great question. I don't know. There are so many cameras that WildEarth has access to. Of course, in about 30 minutes or so, the AfriCam cameras are going to join us too. So I don't. I'm just trying to think. I don't think so. Honestly, the the best chances of seeing an otter, I mean, in the Sabi Sand where Juma is, there's just no big river systems. But that's not to say that you couldn't see one there. And the reason why I say this is because I worked at Sabi very many years ago. And when I was still doing my induction at the lodge, I was based at Bush Lodge just for, I think I was there for a week or so, just understanding, the company, the different roles that everyone plays, that type of thing. And I'd set up tea and coffee for the guests very early one morning. And I'd also asked a couple of days ago when was an otter seen, and the standard response was sometimes you get to see them down at the Sabi River, but that's right in the southern sections of the reserve, not where Bush Lodge is. And it was amazing. So I'm sitting there, and the next minute I see something bounding. Maybe it wasn't actually morning tea and coffee. Maybe it was afternoon high tea. And it was at some point during the day, though. And I was like, what is that running? And it was sort of bounding, and it was very low to the ground. And then it had come from the waterhole in front of the camp. And I thought, that's so strange. It was an otter. I managed to grab my binoculars very, very quickly. And I obviously ran to that guide immediately that had said to me, there's no ways that otters would ever occur here at Bush Lodge. And I was like, we've just seen an otter. And then thankfully there were other people who saw it too. And he'd been on the reserve for like 15 years already, and he couldn't believe it. So it just goes to show they also will travel distances, but naturally they need to spend time in water. Their life is around water. So I don't know if we would see any on any of the cameras that WildEarth has access to, but you never know. Maybe one day one arrives and decides it's going to live in Gari Dam. That's hopeful thinking though, because they're quite shy. They wouldn't want to be out in the open like that. But to see a Cape clawless otter would be something so special. I've been lucky. I've seen plenty in my career, and especially down in the Eastern Cape of South Africa at Kariga Game Reserve, I've had the most spectacular otter sightings in the Bushmans and the Kariga River, which is quite a fun thing to see when you're on the boats. Oh, and then Andrew, the video guy, you've said if snow falls on the Kruger, would the animals freak out? I have no idea what the animals would do. I don't think if it snowed in the Kruger, it would be for an exceptionally long period, right? I don't think it would. I highly doubt that there'd be, a foot of snow covering the ground. But who knows? Stranger things have happened, right? And with climate change, you never know. I think it would be a strange feeling. I would worry about younger animals, uh, maybe subsiding to something called cold shock, hypothermia, with the sudden temperature drops that typically come with snowfall. So, but I'm not sure. I have no idea. I mean, there's animals down in the Eastern Cape. Once again, it does get really cold in certain areas, and there's famous pictures of cheetah and giraffe and other animals in snow. But again, it doesn't last for weeks. It's maybe a day or two, and then everything starts melting and going back to normal again. But I don't know. I doubt it. I don't know if our animals would be warm enough for if there was an ice age that happened again. A lot of animals would be in a bit of trouble. Okay, thank you, Zebra. We're going to hang on tight until some elephants arrive, but let's head back over to the Sabi Sand. Oh, there we go. Beautiful sounds of all sorts of insects, with the ringneck doves also calling quite a bit. Justin, right, you've asked if there are any animals that keep me up at night in game reserves, and I'm just trying to think. Not necessarily. At the moment at home, I live in a wildlife state. The porcupines are driving me insane. They keep breaking my fence for what reason, I have absolutely no idea. I'm not growing anything that would be of any interest. They're not even eating anything. It's like they're just cutting across the garden to be spiteful and destroying the fence. So tomorrow I will be porcupine proofing my garden completely. They're going to be in a big shock. And then when I'm on a reserve, I suppose hippos, especially when I've been in reserves that are next to big river systems, and there are lots and lots of hippos that come out of the water, not just five or six. Like sometimes you'll look and there's like 20 hippos out grazing on the floodplains. Uh, so they would keep me up just from them making so much noise, even the constant feeding and ripping the grass out, because sometimes they'll come right up close to the accommodations, whatever type they may be. Yeah, it's hard to sleep through hippos brawling. It sounds like dinosaurs. It's a crazy sound. It's very difficult to explain, but it's literal roaring. And you could think it's lions fighting or lions killing an animal of some kind of big animal like a buffalo. But otherwise, not nothing really keeps me up at night. Like I'm so used to the sounds of hyenas, lions, and leopards. I still wake up for them, but there's also times where I'll just sleep straight through them too. We don't even have the huge herds of impala that we've been seeing around at Gowrie Dam. It's also just crazy to see how dense this vegetation is getting. It's just like it keeps getting thicker and thicker and thicker. It's been a long time since I've seen the bush so lush, like to this extreme, but we've had a couple of years of phenomenal rainfall. which then results in good growth. There's so much water still. The water table in the ground water table is still really high. And the Egyptian geese are loving it that they don't have to go far to do a bit of grazing. The blacksmith lapwing not grazing, but pecking around for insects. It's nice just to have a quick look around and see if we can find anything. Flo, you've asked an interesting question. You said, are there any reports of uh, nutrias, or is South Africa still nutria free? I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Um, so we, as far as I understand, we don't have nutria. It's a large rodent species that is native to South America. So I haven't heard of any existing populations. We do get a species of rodent called the cane rat, which is rather large and resembles, I suppose, uh, those creatures from South America. They look very similar, in fact. But cane rats, yeah, they're out and about, and we see them occasionally. I haven't seen a cane rat in ages, in fact. For a very long time. I have heard that they are very good to eat. And I know that sounds like a crazy thing to say there, but I have not eaten one before. But I never like to knock food or, a food source, because we all have different preferences and tastes and that type of thing. But if someone one day were to offer me cane rat, I might try it just because. Who knows? Cabello, now you're wondering, what is my favorite aquatic bird? This is a hard one because I don't actually think I have a favorite aquatic bird. Uh, I like jacanas, but I also really like the little black crakes. Funny to watch. I enjoy them all. Nah, you know what it is? It's probably going to be what are these things called now? A gallinule. One of the gallinule or purple gallinule species, which was really cool. If you don't know what that is, you're gonna have to Google it, sadly, because I can't take my book out and show you. But a gallinule or a swamp hen, one of those things, because they've got big feet like jacanas, but they've got beautiful colorations of purple, green, and blue, and you don't get to see them very often. So I'd love to learn more about them, but sadly, where I live, there's just not that many aquatic environments where you'd necessarily find them. So where I have seen uh, seen them before is actually up in Makuleki. That's one of my favorite places during the rainy seasons. It's like private concession north of Pafuri or north into the west of Pafuri in Kruger. And that area is spectacular for birding. It's one of the best birding destinations in South Africa. No birds up top there though. But I'll have to keep thinking about it. I need to spend more time with water birds to really decide which is my favorite one. And then, Jack, too, you said that you rarely see lions, leopards, or hyenas at the waterholes during the day, and you've asked if they would normally come and drink during the nighttime. Um, they'll come and drink whenever they want, whenever they're thirsty. So, like over my years, I've seen them drinking water at night, early in the morning, when it's 42 degrees Celsius in the middle of the day. It's just that predators, they don't have to consume huge quantities of water because they get a lot of the moisture that they need from food that they're eating. But of course, to quench your thirst is also really nice to do so. It also helps with digestion. So quite often after a big meal, you'll see cats coming down to have a drink. And they're also opportunistic as to when they'll drink. If they find a puddle on the road that they're walking down, they'll drink from that. They won't necessarily make a special effort to come and drink from a water hole if there's no need to. So that maybe is also it. But I mean, on these cameras, I've seen lions drinking from water holes during the day. We had hyena drinking from a water hole and playing in the water. We had a leopard. It wasn't drinking. It was sitting right next to the water hole, though. But it had obviously come down during the day to have a drink, I imagine. Otherwise, why would it be there? So yeah, I think it's just really luck of the draw. But for the most part, yes. Once they've been sleeping during the hottest parts of the day, again, this is also not a set in stone rule. The animals just do whatever they want when they want. Then maybe yes, after they've woken up, the first thing you want to do is go and have a drink. So that could potentially be when it's cooler and slightly darker. But I wouldn't put a set in stone rule to that. Andrew, the video guy, can't stop thinking about animals in snow now and how that would be a dream for me, especially to see African animals in the snow. How bizarre.
We all know the struggle of finding the perfect gift. But what if you could give them an unforgettable experience? Something truly extraordinary. Introducing Nature Eye. Fly a real drone remotely at iconic locations, witnessing the beauty of nature like never before. Sign up to be an explorer and you could win one of these experiences yourself. Visit natureeye.com today.
Oh, the red-billed buffalo weavers are also so chatty. Another pity we don't even have a heron to look at today. One perched up in a tree would have been nice, or even a fish eagle. Yesterday I went on a walk where I live, and I was so close to a fish eagle, it was crazy. In fact, have never been so close to a fish eagle on foot in my entire life. You know, it's always been across a huge body of water and a tree down there. And of course, I didn't have my camera on me, and it was just the most beautiful light. But this bird must have only been about, I don't know, 40 meters away from me, maybe a bit closer, maybe even closer than that, maybe like 30 meters away. And this tree just staring at me, and I was like, oh, okay, very nice. I carried on walking because I didn't want to stare at it for too long in case it flew away. Because they like to do that once they feel that they've been noticed. I absolutely love the way that this camera is positioned. We've had some spectacular sightings looking down onto animals, which is not always a view that we get very often. We've seen snakes, we've had praying mantises, we'll look down onto impala with oxpeckers grooming, not grooming them, but grooming their coats looking for ticks. It's always so special. I would love to, of course, have something like a crested barbet or another bird that has got a powerful enough beak to drill into the wood and create nests of the whole kind. And imagine just having a camera positioned not right up next to it, but pretty close so that you can just watch all the little creatures flying in and out. It would be great. And I've checked out quite a few of these trees. There are plenty of holes. We often see brown headed parrots flying around here, and I think that they were nesting in some of these cavities over the years. It wouldn't surprise me if there haven't been woodpeckers, and also, it's actually when I was at eco training a couple of years ago at Pridelands, not too far from Ndlovu Dam, there's a tree with a golden tailed woodpecker nest, and we used to watch that on a yearly basis, which was awesome. I think it might have been the same pair, just reusing the same nest site. There's a hornbill. Hello. I witnessed something quite humorous the other evening. So there are a lot of bugs about at the moment, especially where I live. So the thing that I have to make sure to do is to switch off all the lights before it gets dark. Otherwise, obviously, we know lights attract lots of insects. These insects are so desperate to get inside that they find their way through the thatch. I have no idea how I do it, but before I know it, I have an entire house filled with insects. So it drives me crazy. So I typically keep all the lights off, and then I'll just use my torch, especially when I'm leaving lounge area and I'm heading to bed, and I'll use my torch and navigate through. I'm so used to using a torch for light. It's actually crazy. Sometimes I forget that I can switch lights on. And I was walking, and I've got this couple of really big windows in the house. Now all my windows have got stickers on so that the birds don't fly into them. Those special stickers that you get. And as I shone my light through this one of the big windows, I thought, what on earth is that? And it was just this dust imprint of a hornbill on the window. Now, I don't know when it must have flown into it. I'm assuming it must have had to have had a dust bath of some kind. It was so funny. The bird was fine because it wasn't there. And I just thought, my goodness, but you could see where its beak had hit the window. You could see its wings spread, and then you could also see its tail feathers perfectly. And I tried to take a photo of the imprint. It's obviously not anything funny, but it just made me chuckle. I thought, oh, hopefully it had just had a dust bath below it and then kind of flew up, and that's why I got the image that I did. But I had a good chuckle about it, so I'm sure it was okay though. But this one just doing what birds do best during the heat of the day, sitting in a nice patch of shade, out of the way, concealed by all the leaves, and just focusing on doing a bit of cleaning, a bit of preening, if you will.
Welcome to Eco Training Pridelands Conservancy. Hey, Susan, no. Oh, look at her, she's absolutely gorgeous. Look at these two pushing each other.
We're now looking at the remains of a foam nest, frog nest. That's a mouthful, right? I don't know if it is active at the moment, meaning are there little tadpoles wriggling around inside? I have absolutely no idea because it lasts for ages, months and months after the eggs have hatched and then drop down into the water below. And then, Andrew, the video guy, you've asked a question, and it's about what is my favorite bird to photograph. I love photographing birds that sit still for long enough for me to take pictures of them. That's the kind of bird that I like. So I'm really not too fussy. It's why is it so difficult? Especially, this drives me insane. I look at my camera and I think I have a decent camera. I spend a lot of time in the wild. I haven't had that many cameras my whole life, but I saved up last year, no, the year before, and I bought a really cool camera. And I'm still really disappointed at the autofocus property. So that drives me insane a little bit. And I'll just, miss lots of pictures because the autofocus is like, we're gonna focus on the single blade of grass, not the big owl sitting behind it. Or maybe an owl's not a good, whatever. But you get what I mean. And I'm just like, you're literally driving me insane. So I end up manual focusing a lot, which is also not great because it's like I'll take 500 photos and two of them are actually in focus. So that's a bit annoying. I'm sure there's lots of people that have the same problem as me. Gosh, the wind is not picking up. I feel like it's always windy in this little area around the dam. Shijima just feels like the Eastern Cape quite a bit. But anyways, it's almost 1 o'clock, which means that we're going to have a couple of different cameras joining, which is exciting. So without further ado, we're welcoming Africam.